Hello, everyone. How's it going? Thank you for coming out to our session on They Love Us, But They Don't Know Us. Public Services Meets Marketing. I am Brian Strand, the Creative Projects Coordinator with Sacramento Public Library.
I am Amy Calhoun. I am the manager of the Communications and Virtual Services Department, and I will also be playing the role of Tracy Potma today, our Public Information Coordinator. We really wish that she could join us. So much of this work could not have happened without her. So do please, at the end, come up and get cards if you want to continue the conversation, because she truly is a part of this.
So we service the Sacramento County. So here's our total system area coverage. We have 28 branches. Today we're going to talk about how we're moving away from reliance on traditional and reactive marketing and towards intentional messaging to have a mass reach. More importantly, we're going to discuss why this change is absolutely necessary for our library and then your libraries as well. As I said, we have 28 locations. We serve a population of nearly 1.5 million. This whole presentation is going to be about strategy. So the concepts can scale down for smaller branches or can scale up to larger ones as well. So who has seen the OCLC report that came out in March of this year? One? Couple? Okay. So we wanted to go over some of the findings from that report. It's a decade update from a prior report that they had done. So in 2018, they asked the question, if libraries were to shut down, something essential would be lost. At that time, 71% of the people polled agreed with that statement. In 2018, did it go up or down? Down. Ouch. That dropped to 55%. So it's not just the decrease in the overarching sentiment that library is essential. The public's perceived value has decreased in our core service offerings as well. So you see free access to books and technology that some people may not be able to afford. Enthusiasm about our staff dropped. And this. Oh no, what do? So we know this looks very grim, but our library system saw this as an opportunity. We can right the ship. We can do this. So we approached this, we developed priorities for our entire system to focus on. We saw a lot of one-off marketing and promotion for smaller scale things in our branches, and we wanted to devise something that was overarching. So we launched a priorities plan, and it specifically addressed some of the challenges revealed in that report. So even if you don't create an entire plan, your library can still identify priority services and why you should offer those. Okay, I'm gonna hand it over.
How many of you recognize this? Is this your library? One of the major next steps identified in the report was to target public awareness efforts. However, public awareness efforts and marketing in libraries has traditionally been approached like this: flyers for events and programs on a bulletin board inside the library. So what are we going to offer as an alternative? So you can use both marketing and PR tactics and strategy, but you need to take a hard look at what you've been doing. When I say strategy and tactics, an example of a tactic is just sending a press release announcing an event is happening. If an overarching strategy would be positioning your library staff as experts. So, for example, instead of sending a press release about a history lecture, we positioned our librarian, James Scott, as a beer historian. And then this got lots of local media coverage compared to what we usually get when we just announced events. Q&A with Sacramento's beer history. So think about, we're not saying that this is more work, we're just saying this is a different way to do the work, which is why we do think this scales for libraries of different sizes. So think about how you can position your message to engage your audience. And an email or phone call can also replace a press release. We also said in our talk, we talk about overcoming roadblocks. Internal change of any type is always hard. So this is an example of a visual we use to communicate the change internally. The ratio of time that the communications team or whoever is tasked with communication spends on promoting events and programs versus to every other service the library offers. And when we think about what branch staff does, in contrast, events and programs are a small percentage of everything they offer. So we're approaching the change as trying to bring that more in line. Another example of a visual we use to communicate the change to staff. And you do have to be really aware that in moving away from something you've done before, it's going to feel like they're losing something, even though you're trying to do something that hopefully objectively will be more effective and reach more people. So communicating that why, instead of having just a list of, okay, we have this database, this program, this event, thing, list. We, as an organization, are going to have a unified message that we will be known for in the community. And again, why does it matter that we have one? We can refer back to the report about how people don't really know us for the core services we offer or the value that we offer the community. So, let me go back. And we often are using tactics that have very small reach as opposed to mass reach. So how many of you have heard of the messages, libraries transform? How many of you have ever heard someone in the public say that? So, our perception of ourselves, and we know that we offer value, it doesn't match the perception the public has, the media has, sometimes our elected officials. They do love us, there is positive sentiment on the library, but a lot of times it's riding on nostalgia. And at worst, it questions our relevance. And they come in, oh, surprise, I didn't know the library did that. So we really do want to help at our library do a mass message that challenges that and is something that other libraries can replicate the model of. So if you are close enough to see the infographic, what can you spot some of the differences are between 2015 and 2016? A lot more digital checkouts. Visits are down between 4.1 million 2015, 3.8 in 2016. Cardholders are up, slightly up year to year. But what stayed about the same were number of programs and number of attendees, which when you look at total visitors are also about 5 to 10% of all of our visitors. And that's not even including the people who don't use us, which we really need not to forget just because we don't see them face to face every day. So this is another thing that we've used internally to communicate the importance of why we are approaching marketing and communication so differently. I have heard, and I think it can be true, but it's not always true, that events bring in new patrons. And our year-over-year data is not, I can't prove that it's not, but it's definitely not obvious that that is. So again, I mentioned the priorities. The priorities sets out what are our must-have services: reading, tech and creation, early learning, welcoming spaces. And in the more detailed version of the plan, it has goals and objectives for how we reach that. It should have things like our autism and accessibility services, our veteran services, our services for newcomers and refugees and immigrants, history, genealogy. These are things that we have regionally accessible, if not system-wide. And if we strengthen our services and programs and make them truly robust in these areas, we think that it is possible that when people think of Sacramento Public Library, we can be thought of as the leader in Sacramento for all your reading needs. Or the great equalizer for online access and tech skill building. I don't think this is how we're known in Sacramento yet, but it is both about implementation and perception. So that's why this presentation is called Public Services Meets Marketing, because we're not about hype and we're not about spin. We all have a crucial role to play, whether you're the people implementing the services to make them truly make these types of statements true, or whatever you decide that your unified message to the community is, and that it's just not a scattering of programs or a hackathon that you can go to once a year. We have to deliver that we are the great equalizer for online access and tech skill building, and then the people tasked with marketing and communications have to tell that story. So I will now actually tell you how you can actually do some of these things by handing it over to Brian.
Thank you. So I'm going to start off by talking about the development of an ad campaign that we ran this year. I'm going to go over what that well, it's not current anymore, we finished it, but what that campaign was, talk about some of those results, and then I'm going to go over some additional marketing elements that we're utilizing for system-wide support. So this is our ad campaign. It was called Found at the Library. What you're seeing on the screen was some conceptual art that we designed. But what we wanted to do was to move away from small-scale one-off promotions, things like event advertisements, individual service advertisements, which generally take a lot of time and effort and only target small audiences and have minimal return, and concentrate more on overarching high-level campaigns that support our library priorities. So these are 3 concepts that was part of a list of about 20 different messages that follow the same theme and support common goals. All right. So before we actually launched this campaign, we had to sell this to our leadership team and various levels of management as well. So before this saw the light of day or even got to the stage that you're seeing on screen now, we had to get approval on message, visuals, how we were going to promote this, where it was going to go in the market. And so now what you see on the screen is what the campaign ended up actually being. We launched this in March, and it ran for 2 months. This specific campaign, when we launched it, focused on the library priority of early learning. And if you can't see it in the back, it says, "My first words found at the library," and the small text says, "Introduce your child to the world of reading." Beyond just early learning, we wanted to focus on SPL brand awareness. We want to drive that message that the library is an important part of the community, and something that non-users shouldn't be missing out on. It was positioned from an individual's perspective, so it carries that tone of ownership and pride where it says my first words. There's an emotional grab. The library plays a major part in early learning development. So we targeted parents with kids and also former library users, people that remember using the library as children that maybe no longer use it. There's a community value add. So libraries doing great things to enhance the lives of others. And then the ability to access resources, less of a did you know message and more of a here's what you can accomplish by using the library resources. So here's some of our campaign results. Now this was a 2-month campaign. We ran a couple print ads, and based on audits from those print publications, they had a impression rate of about 724,000 over 2 months. We had this in 10 transit shelters throughout the county, which based on traffic patterns, they estimated a little over 2 million impressions there. And then something new that we did for this campaign that we hadn't done before was the digital banner ads. So on Google digital displays, or Google Display Network, we housed the advertisements you see in the bottom left corner there. There were about 9 variations of that would show up on people's screens whenever they accessed Google housed. Right. If they had an IP within the county and they accessed websites, they would see advertisements along these lines. So there's a hard number there. That was almost 400,000 actual impressions that hit. We generated a little over 5,000 clicks back to our landing page. So it was pretty average for the industry. But beyond that click-through, we really wanted to continue that message that supported the overarching brand of the library. Let's see. Okay. So in addition to an ad campaign, we are launching or have already begun launching a merchandising plan. So we've partnered with the Toledo Library in Kansas. They have an excellent merchandising plan that they've put together, and they gave us some great tips. So we presented an entire plan to our leadership team. We had well-defined goals. So the main goal of the merchandising plan is to support reading and welcome spaces by increasing circulation and making our spaces a place people want to spend their time. We also have the goal of getting all staff on board to share a unified vision of consistent branch merchandising. So with those goals, we aligned with organizational priorities of welcoming spaces and reading. We utilized proven methods based on consumer psychology, the science of eye movement, existing elements of successful design, and these would drive impulse checkouts, increase length of visits, and the likelihood of returning. We also put together a merchandising accountability team because this was something that was a little above an individual taking on in a 28 branch system. So we went and trained a task force, designated branches. We have a 3, maybe 4 phase implementation. We're in the middle of our, well, actually we're at the end of our first phase, and we're going to be moving into the second phase soon. This involved communication with supervisors, training materials, merchandising team walkthroughs and planning, and finally branch implementation. Oh, let me explain the images here too. So this is one of the branches that has already implemented. The image on the bottom right is the heat map. So we got a lot of information from that. It really showed us where those hotspots were within our branches, what were the prime real estate, and where those dead zones were. And the dead zones were generally where all of our books were. And the hotspots were our circ desk, our holds, prime media like DVDs, things of that nature. So some of the strategies we've implemented is using those patterns, moving holds further back in the library, moving those top grabbed objects and putting more, really trying to drive that impulse checkout by putting more things along those walking paths. Decluttering was a big part of it as well. So reducing branch clutter and dependence on print as a promotional necessity, things like lobby signs, brochures, flyers. That's a huge part because in order to engage people, we want to make sure that our librarians are talking with people and not depending on flyers blanketing a wall as communicating what's going on in our branches. That personal engagement is a big part of this. For some of the print needs, we are offloading to what we're calling comm ambassadors. So these will own non-SPL priority branch level print needs, things like the branch calendars, any type of notice, signage, or anything along those lines. We have a consistent design and brand for any flyers and for calendars. So if you go into any one of our branches, you should see similar signage and collateral print. So the top right image, this is taken at one of our branches where we have just a ton of bookmarks, pretty much everything that we could cram into that space. There's a lot of duplication in there. There's things like a brochure that's showing on one side, then flipped over on the other side. So rather than thinning out and drawing the eye to maybe what's a little more important, we just tend to fill space. So one of the big things we're trying to do is declutter that space. And we're going to be undertaking a print audit in the beginning of next year to get rid of a lot of the older items. priority program support. So sometimes when we do programming and we reach the next year or the next time we're going to do it, we do A, B, C, and D because that's what we did last year. And rather than looking at what it was effective and redoing it, we just kind of check boxes. So one way that we're addressing that is we're going back and looking at it, finding out what is driving people to programming or individual services, and trying to go away from those check boxes. So consistency is key, whether you're advertising, merchandising, creating branch visuals, web, social media outreach, whatever. Moving away from small scale, developing a high level strategy can ultimately help you achieve the goal of supporting your individual priorities.
All right, I'm officially filling in for Tracy now, our public information coordinator. So another report that OCL put out, it was called the Marketing and Communications Landscape in U.S. Public Libraries. And you won't be surprised that only 25% of public libraries have marketing professionals on staff. More often than not, as you already know, that role is often given to librarians, who often have to probably be doing other things as well in their organization. So because of that, we wanted to touch base on what exactly is public relations, because it's a term that gets used a lot that people aren't that familiar with in practice. So a lot of people, our experience has been in the field, think that public relations is sending press releases, scheduling interviews, and greeting the media. However, in reality, it is more like there is media relations, your internal communications, digital and new media, content marketing, which we're going to go take a deep dive into in a minute here, reputation management, crisis communications, and message development. So let's take a look at the key strategies as you move away from small scale tactics. And so it may be hard as you look at this major chart and overwhelming, but where we think you should start is content marketing. In a way, this is you getting your house in order first before you go on to any other bigger tactics. What is content marketing? So think of it this way. You have to get your house in order first before you invite people over to show it off. So you have to start telling your own story well before you can share it well with others. So if you take a look at this snapshot of our current website, can you immediately tell what services we provide to the 0 to 5 parents demographic? You can't immediately tell, and that's a misstep. You have to dig deep into the page to find what are the services, what are the programs that support birth to 5 children. So that's a misstep. We have to respect the time and resources of our web users and our patrons by providing the information quickly and succinctly. And that is called user experience. So according to the Nielsen Norman Group, the first requirement for an exemplary user experience is to meet the exact needs of the customer without fuss or bother. So we are currently redesigning our website, and it will launch in the new year. And this is a draft of the early learning section. It takes into consideration design and how the copy is placed in the page. One without the other provides an incomplete user experience. It's laid out in a way that's intuitive for the user to navigate the page. If we look back at the other page, you have to read the entire page to fully grasp, and here you can tell at a glance and self-serve. If you click through to something like Storytime, this is what you'll see. The new design takes accessibility into consideration. It levels the playing field so everyone can access the content more easily. You can tell the writing style is more brief, it has bullet points, it's easier to see at a skim, that's more accessible. And it gives them an immediate snapshot of what we offer and our area of expertise. It quickly sells the product, in this case, Storytime, and when they can access it. Another thing, how many of you have a library newsletter in print or email? Almost everybody, as did we. This is a snapshot of one from April 2014. We covered lots and lots of great information, but we forgot one thing. What was in it for the reader? We listed lots and lots of events. We talked about awards and grant money. We even promoted other organizations. And we didn't directly relate to what we do and the impact it has on the community. And as we've learned, that's needed for libraries now more than ever. So as a result, our readership numbers were relatively low. So you can see, if you're not near the slides, that we used to send it out to 100,000 patrons and had about 15,000 opens. Fast forward to today, we've more than doubled readership, even though we're sending it to fewer people. And that's on purpose that we're sending it to fewer people. At the beginning of 2017, we completely revamped to begin to tell our story. If you're close enough, you can see that we even rebranded the name of the newsletter to be Library Stories. So in telling our story, we could show our impact and what that means for the reader. And more importantly, we changed the voice and tone to be friendly, conversational, and fun. We don't just provide information, we make them want to read it. And I bet most of you, when you interact with patrons at the desk or out in the community at outreach events, are fun and conversational. So if your email communications and your newsletter isn't, maybe that's something that you could easily change. It's the same amount of time to write the newsletter, you're just doing it a different way. The articles that we chose to include in our newsletter were things that showed our expertise in reading, in tech and creation, in early learning, and being a welcoming community space. So once you have your story in place through content marketing, your expertise on display, and a strong online foundation to point back to, now is your time to get the media involved. So, and by media, we don't mean just contacting event calendars or websites with event listings. So just as you've done with content marketing, you need to move away from only listing what's available and instead sell it. This was our media coverage word cloud before we stopped the presses and started telling our story. So I do think we have time for a quick activity, and that is, what are the things that you prominently see in this word cloud of our media coverage? Shout out. Yeah, I heard AM and PM. You may also see adjustable rate loan. What you may also notice is that none of it screams, amazing library making an incredible impact. In fact, that cloud is not even mostly our coverage. It comes up strong in the results because our voice wasn't there and our library was mentioned in as a location. Okay. Yay, media relations after. We changed that. Now we tell stories that support our priorities and position us as subject matter experts in each of these areas. So now this is our word cloud. So if you look at how prominent our name is and the other words surrounding it, those are all good words from coverage that we receive that tells our story and shows the audience what we do and how it makes an impact. And one of our experts, this is going to segue in so well to our next slide, our next couple of slides. Christy Ham's name is in there, who is right up here, folks. One of our early learning experts. So that's story that garnered us that excellent word cloud in part was also because of a mental health training story that one of our librarian spearheaded and offered to our library staff. And that's where you want to land on this content marketing to media to reputation management journey. It's those stories that are going to prove that we are subject matter experts, not just people who check out books to the public. It's those stories that have the media knocking on your door to talk about literacy and technology and not just about stuffed animal sleepovers, as cute as they are. This graphic is just for a laugh to ease the harsh reality of that report we touched on at the beginning of the presentation. Our communities love us, but they don't know us. We are not a shush. So going back to what was just noticed, we often focus solely on promoting our individual programming and allow the very things that make up who we are to remain a surprise. We are proud librarians, but we are also subject matter experts in literacy, technology, and so much more. So how do we go about shifting the familiar view of the library? So this is a reputation management after. Using early learning as an example again, we have to focus less on promoting ourselves as a place for craft programming and position ourselves as subject matter experts in early learning. That doesn't mean that all programming goes away. I know that from our early learning experts, process-based art is very important for early childhood development, but it's all a matter of how you're positioning the programs that you offer. So, what does this all mean? Align your name and the name of your experts with issues related to the priority, i.e. that mental health training we focused on and being mental health first responders, tied into an important community issue because we're dealing with significant homelessness and often mental illness is a component or something that comes out of that. So, for example, in Sacramento, we have learned that we're often left out of the conversation when key community leaders are talking about early learning. So we're going to interject ourselves. How? We will watch for current trends and respond. So the next time a pre-K for all conversation comes up or there's a lawsuit discussion about how children in California cannot read at grade level, that's when we'll be submitting an op-ed to our local paper and pitching our local television stations. And there is our early learning expert. So as you can see, you have to align your staff and your programming and services that you're already offering with the current issues. So we talked as we went through how you can overcome some roadblocks to change in your organization, but I'll touch on one last method. Bringing in an outside perspective and adding some value to it when you share it. You could, if you especially do not have a dedicated team of marketing or PR professionals at your library, make it a honorarium or an honor to serve on an advisory team of local marketing and communication professionals. They could meet quarterly and help guide the people tasked in your library with your marketing and communication efforts. Use research and data like the national study from awareness to funding that we cited at the beginning. The merchandising training and plan that Brian mentioned is called Visual Merchandising for Public Libraries. It's an InfoPeople course. And use your other library departments and staff. We have found people who are willing to pilot things and then lo and behold, they got rid of all of their paper flyers for a period of time and just used one print piece, event calendar. They actually found that event attendance went up because they were doing more word of mouth marketing, making sure they actually gave the calendar out and partnering with local organizations to hand the calendar out and share with their communities that the events were coming up. So it carries a lot more weight if it comes from a peer and you have evidence that it's worked. So in that, now I will turn it over to questions, and I will also note that you can grab a card, and we shared our contact information up here because we really do want to help. We do really want to take this beyond Sacramento Public Library. Thank you.
Sure. I I totally agree. First step that we took in some of these was getting the leadership buy-in. We really wanted to have a top-down message on the way that we're shifting as a culture. It didn't happen overnight. A lot of this has been gradual. I want to say we started a lot of these efforts in early 2017. So like removal of flyers, placement of things, even just merchandising of books and how they're positioned out on the shelves. All those things have happened gradually over time. So I wouldn't anticipate, this to happen overnight. I think it's the long con. Maybe not a con, maybe that's not a good word.
And he mentioned briefly the COM ambassadors. If you can have a team of highly motivated people who really take pride in the library, and whether it's how the library looks or what the message is, its outreach, utilize those people, bring them in, collaborate with them. They'll be telling your story. And, having a pilot branch also has worked really well for us. Yes.
First of all, I don't know whether you know this, but I think you're developing a brand for
Oh,
presentations.
thank you.
Where I've gone, you guys have from summer reading to outreach to whatever, you all
That's
have.
awesome to hear.
Yeah, we have a couple of other presenters in here. Justin, Christy, thank you.
Thank you.
And Cat Crossway.
Yes.
Well, it's all a great information. The graphic effect, now, how did you do that? Is that, what, count people? What was that? How do I identify this?
So we positioned someone that watched people walking through the front door for an hour at various times, and they would just sit there and draw lines and follow where people came in, where they would go. Yeah. And then we just took a photo and put it. So there's nothing digital about it. It was very manual. Yeah. I mean, pretty much once they tracked them until they couldn't track them anymore. Right. The specific branch that we did, that one came from, you pretty much have line of sight of almost the entire branch. True. That would be a little more complex. Yeah.
You might need multiple volunteers.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say.
Can I ask about that, or are we like, great, this person came in and sat with their laptop for 3 hours, success?
Well, I think you know that is a high traffic zone. So I don't know how close that is to your front door, but what we would do, okay, that's good. So we would want to find what paths people are taking to get there and recognize that those are high traffic routes. And that's where we're going to position a lot of face out and displays to try to get those impulse buys, impulse checkouts, Yes, you had a question?
We have a very successful Yule Ball every year, and we do create some nice physical print pieces for it, like an invitation, but really the success is word of mouth. So your teen advisory boards, if you are sharing clever messages and, taglines with them, they can really help spread the word, because there's nothing worse than a librarian using terms like lit and bay, and it's really inauthentic, but if it's coming from a teen to a teen. So I think the idea is you have those teens on your advisory board who are really engaged, and then when they understand the why of what the library is and that it's a welcoming space, they're going to spread that message for you. And going back quickly to the study carrels, I would also say be careful of, I like what Brian said about it being on the way you have lots of displays, but protect the quietude and reflective space of the study area, and don't cover, if we're the marketing people and we're saying don't cover it with marketing flyers, we really mean it. The eye needs space to rest. Yes. Yes, we will upload the slides to the app, And we will also be available if you do want to grab a card.
We have some cards. Yeah, we'll pull it up. So we tried to spread it out in various places. We utilized 2 print publications. We utilized transit shelter signage. So the bottom right image there would be like one of the bus stops that had some signage. Hold on, let me go down here. Where's my mouse?
And the
Sorry.
print included Sacramento Parent Magazine, so it was very targeted to that audience.
Right, and California Kids, which is another local publication. Digital banner ads, so those were a little more spread across just websites with people in the county visiting those. We utilized our 3 vehicles. We have 3 Sacramento Public Library delivery trucks, so we also wrapped those. Some branch signage, we did the computer catalog as screensavers, also featured similar signage. So really the idea was to get the repetition in the community, in the library, online. On our homepage, we also had it as a click-through there. So we really just wanted to make sure it was out in many places. Any others? I do know how much it costs. So the total of the first run of this campaign was just over $12,000. The largest portion of that came in the form of print, which the next phase of this advertising campaign, which we're going to launch at the end of this year, beginning of next year, we're going to do much more digital advertising. It's less expensive. We know exactly how many people are seeing it. We know exactly how many click-throughs are coming back. And that campaign, we're focusing on digital, our digital library collection. So
Yeah, for example, we only spent $3,000 over 2 months on Google's ad display network, and you can tell exactly whether people click through or not. So I do think, lesson learned, we will continue to move away from print, though depending on the target audience, that may not be the case, but we use so many different channels just because this was one of our first major campaigns and we wanted to know which channels we saw the most return on. So nothing cost more than $3,000 or $4,000. There were some things that were just a couple $100s. So I wouldn't want you to think that the $12,000 is the norm. It was more just about testing all the different Sacramento channels for ads.
Just how to find someone, are there people who do this to kind of audit our marketing and our like internal like personal marketing at all? I mean, how do we do that? We have librarians doing marketing. You know, we look around the building and go, okay, that, you know, that's all we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we used, like I said, we used a model that the Toledo Library presented. So I think that was very helpful. I don't think you need to be a merchandising specialist to follow some of the guidelines they put in place. Of course, if you have budget, you could go looking for a professional to do consulting in that field as well. But the fact that something exists that they have shown and proven that there was positive results, was very positive to see out there.